This video is brought to you by Squarespace. If you need a website or domain, check out squarespace.com. Hey everybody, and welcome to a new video. Are you a user of Lightroom Classic or Adobe Camera Raw and you're looking for new tools and tricks within Lightroom to take your processing to a new level? I see people who are advanced users all the time using methods to do things that these techniques make obsolete or much easier, or that they don't even know about. In this video, I'm going to share 5 hidden tips that you may not know about Lightroom, even if you've been using it for years. My name is Simon D'Entremont, and I'm a professional nature and wildlife photographer living in Eastern Canada. I make weekly videos giving you photo tips or taking you behind the scenes for nature photography. Subscribe if you want to see more. Okay, let's jump right into it. My first tip is around adjusting midtones. Let's start off by looking at this photo that I took in Svalbard last year, and we've got this Arctic fox just losing its winter coat. Looks a bit ragged, and it was walking along the beach. I remember thinking to myself, when you get to the end of that point with the icicles coming down, please turn around and look at me, and it did. So it made for a great photo. But this is a good example of a photo where working on the midtones is going to be important, and here's the reason why. This photo up on the left here, these darks are very, very dark, and these whites are very, very white. Now, traditionally what you would do here is you'd adjust those white points and black points very carefully to make sure that you're not clipping those blacks and those whites. And as you may have seen in some of my other videos, if you hit Alt on a Windows PC, and that would be Command on a Mac, and you hit blacks and slide it, it will show as I slide to the left where it's clipping. Same thing with whites, hit Alt, Command on a Mac, and slide that to the right, and you'll see it'll show where I'm clipping the whites. So I'll carefully set my whites not to clip. I'll carefully set my blacks not to clip. Fine. Now, how do you adjust the midtones? There's highlights, shadows, whites, and blacks here, but I don't see midtones anywhere. How do I adjust those? Now, if you look at the histogram here, each of these sliders will reveal which parts of the photo they're adjusting. If I hit highlights and move it around, you'll see up on the right here, a gray bar showing that it's adjusting those close to pure white whites. The whites are right on the very edge, close to clipping. Same thing with the shadows and the blacks. But if I put my cursor over the center, you'll see the midtones are a huge part of the photo, and there is no adjustment tool for them. Now you can actually click on the histogram and slide them right and left, but here's the problem with doing that. It's a very blunt instrument because, as you can see, all of the blacks and all of the whites are being moved around with it. And I've just carefully set my blacks and whites to not be blown out. So why would I use this tool that's just gonna throw them right out of whack? I need a more delicate way of managing my midtones. Well, here's the trick. We're gonna go over to color grading. And as you can see here, we have got different choices: shadows, highlights, and midtones. And when we click midtones, even without changing anything on this wheel, down here is the luminance slider for midtones. And as you can see, I move this around. If you look at the histogram, it is moving the midtones left and right without affecting the brightest whites and the darkest blacks. So I'm not risking clipping the whites and the blacks that I've carefully set, but I still get to adjust my midtones. So I'll have a closer look on my subject here, and I'll adjust the luminance here to get the look that I want on my subject, and I know I can do so without clipping anywhere on my photo. A very handy tool and not very well known. The next trick that's not very well known is using the transform tool to straighten out crooked buildings. Now this, if you're a landscape photographer that shoots barns and structures all the time, or an architecture photographer, you may know this, but outside of those genres, this is a tool that people really don't know a lot about. So one of the issues that you have with using wide angle lenses, it creates distortion in buildings and straight structures, either by making them crooked, sometimes you can make them bowed, this feature can really make your buildings look a little bit wonky in your photo. So we're gonna fix that. We're gonna go to the transform tool here. And as you can see, I shot this church at night. I was actually waiting for the clouds to clear to shoot a Milky Way photo, but I thought to myself, why don't I take a photo and get some streaky clouds? I shot a long exposure and made those clouds streak across the frame, and it made a nice photo while I was waiting for my Milky Way shot. But my building here has gotten a little crooked. It's a little bit pyramid shaped. So how am I going to straighten that out? So we're going to zoom into the building here. I'm going to click on guided. Now I'm going to create two lines, either parallel or at 90 degrees to each other, which you can use the side of a building and a horizon, or two sides of a building or two sides of a street, for example. So I'm going to click once up here and drag down to another line on the edge of the building here. And then over here, I'm going to do the same thing, click and drag again on the edge of the building. And when you release, it will have straightened out your building. Now it will sometimes have to distort the image in the way that you lose a little bit of canvas. So you may need to recrop the image a little bit to make up with the fact that you lost a little bit of canvas in the photo. Because fixing the distortion may use some canvas and you might lose some space on the edges of your photo. If you're looking to take photos very close up and get some distortion, you may want to shoot your subject a little bit wider with a wide angle lens. That way you can have a little bit more canvas to play with for the transform tool to be able to make the adjustments and still fit within the crop that you'd like to use. And I'd like to thank the sponsor of this video, Squarespace, making it possible. If you haven't heard of them, they're an all-in-one website platform that helps you create your website from scratch, just like I did. You don't need any coding experience or even to be tech savvy. They have lots of templates to choose from to make it easy to get your own website up and running in no time. Even though they have great templates, like ones for photography, for example, the place to go now is to use their new design intelligence feature, using both Squarespace's experience and cutting-edge AI, helping you to tailor your own website to your own specific needs. It can even help you write text to describe your business or products, or with search engine optimization. It looks really professional to have online galleries and your own domain, and a website is also a great way to monetize your work by setting up an online store using Squarespace payments, which you can set up with just a few clicks. You can even do buy now and pay later with options like Afterpay. Go to squarespace.com to sign up for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/Simon for 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. The third tool I'd like to show you is a new addition into recent editions of Lightroom, and it is removing reflections, which is a really, really neat feature. Now we're looking at a young lady sitting on a bus with a reflection, and the reality is reflections can be very well used in photos to give a certain look. They look great in portraits, they'll look good in street photography. So using reflections is a great mechanism and a great idea for your photography, but it's nice to be able to adjust the amount of reflection that's in your photo. And you can do this now. We're going to look here at the remove tool, and under distraction removal, reflections. Click the apply button, and this will take a few seconds to find the reflections in your photo and remove it from the photo. And voila, it has removed the reflection from the photo. Here is a before and after showing you that effect. But also you can adjust the amount of effect with the slider. And this is where artistically, this is a very powerful tool because, as I mentioned, having reflections in your photos can be very powerful in terms of doing very artistic photography, but being able to adjust the amount of reflection is great. And here's a really neat tool as well, a neat effect. If you move this all the way to the left, you get 100% reflection. So we've got a way to remove reflections if we want, or to adjust reflections as we want as well. And under quality, you can change to a lesser quality, a standard quality, and best quality as you want to. So what a great tool to be able to adjust your reflections or totally remove them if it doesn't meet the scene. For example, let's say you're shooting out of an apartment building at night, you want to shoot a cityscape through the window. Sometimes managing reflections is very, very difficult, but here's a great tool to be able to do that. My next tip is around managing the unwanted extra saturation given to your photo by some effects that we use. For example, I've got a photo here of a male line I took in Kenya. If I zoom in here, very nice photo, shot in very low light though. And one of the challenges of shooting in low light without a lot of direct light is that the image looks kind of flat. If you look at the histogram, it's all bunched up in the middle. It's all midtones. There's no highlights and no darks. So one of the ways to improve on that is to increase the contrast in the image. Now we can go here to the contrast slider and I can increase the contrast. That's kind of a blunt instrument, but look as well, look at the increase in saturation it's adding to my photo. I actually don't like that look at all. It's not very pretty. It is stretching the histogram, as we can see up top here, but that's not a very pretty effect. A tool that people often use to get a little bit more delicate look to their increase in contrast is to use a tone curve. And here, if we use the point curve, put it on linear, and if I raise up here and lower down here, we're putting on the old S curve that's done all the time and is a very effective way of adding contrast to our image. But look at the ugly, I'll say, increase in saturation it's created for my photo. Here's the before and after. That's not pretty at all. What's the solution? It's staring us right in the face. Underneath the tone curve is the refine saturation slider. Right now it's at 100%, and if I pull it all the way back, what it does is it removes the extra saturation that the tone curve put into my photo. So now, if I do a before and after, I can slide this to the right, look at all that unwanted extra saturation, or I can move it to the left. Another way of checking this, if I move the saturation slider back to the default point, and if I click on the little eye here, you can see the extra saturation that was added as well as the extra contrast. But if I move the refine saturation slider all the way left and then I click on this little icon, you can see that I got extra contrast without any added extra saturation. That is a fantastic tool and not very well known. The next example I'd like to show you is how to adjust your brushes to make them more effective in certain types of photos. So now if I click on the masking icon, I click on brush, I think everybody here who's been using Lightroom knows that you can brush on an effect in any shape that you want. And then when you apply exposure or any other effect, it will apply to the area that you brushed on. And you can see by hitting O, it will hide and reveal the overlay that shows where your effect is being applied. Very handy, very cool, but sometimes it's making things a little bit more difficult than we'd like. So let's remove this one here. I'm gonna create a new brush. Let's say I want to brush an effect on a straight object like this beam right here. I'm going to change the size. And by the way, I use a mouse with a center wheel. Moving the center wheel around can change the brush size, and that's the easiest, quickest way for me that I've known to do this. And I'm gonna remove the feathering. Now, if I click here on the bottom, I can try to go up in a straight line, but it's hard and not very accurate. So I've got a better way. Let's create a brush. Now I click on the bottom of this beam, then I go up to the top of the beam, hit Shift, and then click on the image again. And look at that, it creates a perfectly straight line. And then now I can apply my effects to this straight beam in a way that's much more consistent because the line is perfectly straight. But not all lines in the world are straight and are equal. Now let's look at this subway track, which is going in a straight line, but decreasing in width as it goes forward. What do we do there? Let's pick a brush. Let's resize the brush to cover the size of the track. So I'll start this off a little bit here. And then what do I do then? I'm gonna go over to the other end of the track. And as you can see, I'm using my scroll wheel to resize the brush. I'm gonna resize it to the size of what's in the distance. Then I'm gonna hit Shift and click into the distance, and look what it did. It resized the brush in a consistent way from the first point to the second point. And now when I apply effects, it applies it to the brushed in area and the area that's revealed. And it resized the brush into the distance the way that I selected. A very cool way of resizing your brush and making quick adjustments for things that are maybe changing in shape, like a road going into the distance, for example. That way of resizing a brush is not very well known. By the way, if this peek into Lightroom and the things you can do with it interested you and you shoot wildlife, I have a whole course with 10 hours of video lessons on processing your wildlife photos in Lightroom Classic. I even include raw photos of mine of wildlife for you to process along. Link below. And a reminder that I've now got my own signature edition photography jacket. I partnered with German company Hochland and field tested it in Western Canada photographing grizzlies in weather that changed every hour. That's why a jacket with 3 separate layers which you can mix and match is great to have. An inner fleece, a middle puff jacket, and an outer wind and rain shell. A built-in photo bag for your batteries and cards and a pouch for a lens cloth means it's great for photographers. We're shipping in October but offering €50 off, a free beanie, and free shipping on pre-orders. Check it out in the link below. I hope you can use these tips to take your photo processing to the next level so you can take pride in your own unique and amazing photos. I know you can do it.